Tonight, a customer's brush with death as the South Coast bakery becomes an accidental drive-through. A warning to troublemakers in SA shopping centres, the new penalties that could bar them from stepping foot inside. The SA program helping at-risk youth turn their lives around on the basketball court. Cold case clues frozen in time inside the Adelaide lab catching killers. Shedding their insecurities and their clothes, why thousands of Aussies stripped off on a famous landmark. And a power star prepares to head stateside while the women are off to the AFLW finals for the very first time.
Live from Adelaide, 7 News with Mike Smithson.
Good evening. A woman has cheated death after a car ploughed into a busy Goolwa bakery on the south coast. She was pinned between the car and the front counter. Several other customers and staff were showered with glass.
Just centimetres from disaster. It's a miracle everyone inside this busy Goolwa bakery lived to tell the story.
There was this almighty bang. It was like an explosion and then just a big whoosh. We didn't know what happened.
Police say the 69-year-old driver behind the wheel of this Mazda lost control, slamming into the bakery just before 11 this morning.
She was in shock, the poor darling. It came in so quickly.
In the firing line, a regular customer who witnesses say was pinned between the car and the counter.
Thankfully, our staff got out of the way in time, but the poor lady, of course, she was on the other side of the counter, so she took the full brunt of the car.
Another customer and a staff member were hit by flying glass, witnesses describing the aftermath as sheer chaos.
I saw a young girl come out crying and hugging her family.
Honestly, seeing the car was all the way in the bakery, it's hard to believe that people were not really severely hurt.
The injured woman suffered non-life-threatening injuries while the driver was also taken to hospital as a precaution. Police are still investigating what led to the crash. The bakery says it'll be closed until further notice while the damage is assessed, but the local community is already rallying around the popular business.
Hopefully we'll be able to still trade as best we can in a bit of an incapacitated manner.
I think people will want to come in and help support them and get them back on their feet for sure.
For now, a bakery giving a whole new meaning to live and let pie. Jasmine Turlings, 7 News.
The state government's cracking down on violent behaviour in shops and shopping centres. Dangerous customers could face bans with repeat offenders thrown behind bars.
Shoppers and staff forced to hide when Westfield Marion was locked down in July. Those caught up in the ordeal left on edge.
I started at that store probably a week after that occurred, and still the team were still very emotional about the situation that had occurred.
Retail staff repeatedly in the firing line with little they can do.
We're standing here today to say that enough is enough when it comes to retail violence.
The state government unveiling plans to give store owners, chains and shopping precincts the right to ban dangerous customers.
Assaults are threatening people, causing damage to property. Today, we're going out for consultation about workplace protection orders.
We don't really care what age you are. If you assault a retail worker, then you shouldn't be allowed to go back into that store.
Retailers would need to apply to the courts to ban the person for up to 12 months. If the order's breached, they could be jailed for up to 5 years.
So that finally in South Australia, we have a system where retail workers can be safe from those people that abuse, assault, indeed stalk staff.
The state government will also consider including interim bans for more urgent cases, while applications are being considered by the courts.
It's quite hard when you see your team tense up when they see a repeat offender walk through the doors, knowing what's going to come.
The proposed laws will be introduced to Parliament early next year. Ashley Kanowski, 7 News.
To a developing story, and there's been a horror crash in the state's southeast. Just before 3 this afternoon, passing motorists pulled over to assist before emergency services arrived. It's understood at least 2 people have sustained serious injuries in the 3-car smash. Major crash officers are on their way to the scene on the Riddock Highway at Nangwarry, just north of Mount Gambier. Two 15-year-old boys have been charged after taking a stolen ute on a joyride and dumping it at Mitchell Park. They tried to make a run for it but were rounded up by a police dog.
Flying down the road, a stolen ute hits a dead end. Two 15-year-old boys make a run for it. Star Force officers first on scene and give chase. The dog squad not far behind, joining the manhunt.
Well, it's obviously concerning.
Just minutes earlier, the Triton's tyres were spiked before it continued all the way to Thurza Avenue.
We went to bed about, I suppose 11 it must have been, but I just heard a bang.
The local teens were taken into custody just after 11 p.m, but only hours after their arrest, they were free to go on bail.
They get a slap on the hand and then they're out and then they do it again.
The Mitsubishi ute was stolen earlier in the night from a nearby home. Local residents fear Mitchell Park is getting a bad reputation. They say they've been left with no choice but to increase security, like installing gates. It comes a day after an elderly woman was attacked around the corner. Leaving her with nasty injuries. A 17-year-old Whyalla boy charged.
Did you assault a 68-year-old woman?
Hopefully somebody's spoken to them fairly seriously.
Mitchell Sariovsky, 7 News.
An Adelaide Plains family has lost everything after fire ripped through their transportable home at Two Wells. Firefighters responded to numerous 000 calls just after 6 last night. Fortunately, no one was home at the time and the inferno also engulfed the family's car. Damage is estimated at $240,000. A scare for a Sefton Park family when a neighbour's car caused a trail of destruction last night. Their Hyundai Getz was parked in the driveway in Burns Avenue when a neighbour's vehicle reversed into it from across the road. The little hatch was pushed into the house, punching out brickwork below a front window. Luckily, no one was injured. Well, there are serious questions being asked tonight of the Prime Minister's relationship with former Qantas boss Alan Joyce. Anthony Albanese has returned to Australia to claims he personally requested more than 20 free flight upgrades and perks for his family.
Landing in claims of Qantas corruption, Anthony Albanese, home from the South Pacific, not keen to get stuck talking. Visibly angry as he was pressed on revelations, he asked former Qantas CEO Alan Joyce for more than 20 free upgrades on economy class flights dating back to 2009.
Every single thing has been declared. Every single thing has been declared.
Including an Emirates flight from Sydney to Rome in 2011.
Well, buongiorno.
And for lounge membership for his son after splitting from partner Carmel Tebbit.
My relationship ended. My relationship ended in my +1 when that happened, and I put out a media release when my marriage ended. You can't be more transparent than that. And my +1 became my son.
His relationship with Alan Joyce under scrutiny after Qantas publicly backed Labor's Yes campaign.
How you going, buddy? You've been awesome.
And Labor blocked Qatar Airways from bringing more flights into Australia, freeing up more airspace for the national carrier and reducing competition.
The Prime Minister has been running a protection racket for Qantas.
The same relationship with him that I have with John Borghetti as the CEO of Virgin.
7 News asked Qantas about the nature of the relationship between their former CEO and the Prime Minister, but they refused to comment. Their position up in the air. Isabel Mullen, 7 News.
The state opposition is calling on the government to reinstate its home battery scheme. Previously, South Australian households could receive up to $6,000 towards installing a solar charged battery. But the subsidy was scrapped by Labor in 2022, pointing to a low uptake.
I think still tens of thousands of people took up this scheme, but don't forget, since Labor's come into power prices have gone up by around $800.
We're not interested in repeating something that didn't work. Is Vincent Targe and the Liberals for or against renewables?
The opposition says $19 million was still allocated to the scheme when it was axed. Well, after a decade in power, Labor's time is up in the Sunshine State. Queenslanders have turned to a Liberal National Party and leader David Crisafulli, who claimed an election night victory, but the outgoing Premier wasn't as quick to concede defeat.
An early start on day one for Queensland's new Premier.
We're off to work and we're underway.
The sounds of last night's victory still ringing in his ears. Winning a campaign fought on youth crime, and after 10 years of Labor, it's time.
Tonight, Queenslanders have voted for hope over fear.
Labor's Stephen Miles not conceding last night.
I will never stop fighting for our Labor agenda.
This morning, accepting defeat, confirming he will stand to lead Labor in opposition. The latest count, the LNP with 49 seats, majority government, Labor 36. Having suffered 10% swings in the regions, 8 in the outer suburbs, 5 in metropolitan Brisbane.
It was like climbing a mountain weighed down with a backpack and in the sleeting snow.
Cost of living and housing were big issues in the Brisbane electorate. It's a clear message to the federal government that urban voters will whack it too if it doesn't do enough to ease those pressures. Katter's Australians Party leader Robbie Katter tackled on Seven's coverage over his call to recriminalise abortion.
This has caused women a huge amount of fear and anxiety. Would you like to apologise or show any remorse for what you've done? A huge amount of Robbie, there has been a spike.
Women voters speaking for themselves. His party's vote falling. Mark Riley, 7 News.
Donald Trump's longest-serving national security advisor has told 7 News the former president will scrap plans to supply Australia with nuclear-powered submarines if he's re-elected. The bombshell claim came as both candidates fought it out in duelling swing state appearances.
A former First Lady with American men in her sights.
Fellas, before you cast your votes, ask yourselves, what side of history do you want to be on?
Michelle Obama, helping out a friend and, she hopes, her country.
Do not hand our fates over to the likes of Trump.
He too was in Michigan, aware that the race here is tied and hinging on the local Muslim population.
We're winning overwhelming support from the Muslim and Arab voters.
Trump's telling supporters he'll end all wars. Others, though, aren't convinced.
He's an aberration in American politics. In Star Wars terms, he's sort of a disturbance in the force.
That, the brutal assessment of Trump's own long-time former national security advisor, John Bolton.
He knows very little history or very much about the world. We're going to have a long 4 years if he's elected.
The one-time US ambassador telling 7 News all bets would be off in a second Trump term.
I think it's very dangerous because Putin and others, Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, President Erdogan of Turkey, know how to play Trump. They know how to flatter him. They know how to appeal to his ego.
You're painting the picture there of a foreign policy dope, essentially.
He doesn't have a philosophy or think in policy terms. He thinks primarily about what benefits Donald Trump.
Meaning allies like Australia could be left out in the cold.
So is the AUKUS alliance therefore in doubt?
Well, I think it could be in jeopardy. I think I would not take it for granted. All Trump looks at is the balance sheet, and if he sees more U.S. expenditures than those of the other parties to the agreement, then I think there'll be trouble.
And the same goes for NATO, but Trump's made that clear, and the only advice Ambassador Bolton has for our PM in navigating a possible Trump 2.0.
If the Prime Minister of Australia plays golf, that's a plus. If he doesn't, he might want to learn.
In Kalamazoo, Michigan, David Woywood, 7 News.
Western leaders are hoping Iran will not respond to Israel's latest missile attack, which targeted military sites around Tehran. Iranian leaders claim at least 4 of their soldiers were killed, but they maintain the strikes caused only limited damage.
It was the biggest strike on Iranian soil in decades, a calculated mission carried out by Israel's formidable air force, releasing new images of its pilots preparing to fly deep into enemy territory. Tehran said the retaliatory strikes were largely thwarted by its air defence system, downplaying the extent of the damage, but confirming 4 of its soldiers were killed.
Our message is clear.
All those who threaten the state of Israel and seek to drag the region into wider escalation will pay a heavy price.
It's been almost a month since Iran unleashed a barrage of ballistic missiles at Israel, ratcheting up this regional conflict and opening the door for Israel to target Iran's nuclear and oil facilities.
It looks like they didn't hit anything other than military targets. My hope is this is the end.
World leaders calling for containment.
We need to avoid further regional escalation and urge all sides to show restraint. Iran should not respond.
Iran says it's entitled to respond in what could descend into a dangerous and direct tit-for-tat. In London, Ashley Mullaney, 7 News.
The King and Queen are reflecting on a successful Pacific tour as they return to the UK. Their visit to Australia is continuing to draw praise from British commentators who now claim it set the Republican movement back a decade. King Charles is now expected to return to a normal schedule of overseas visits next year as he continues his battle with cancer. Now let's check in with Abba what's coming up in sport.
Smillo, Port Adelaide is everywhere at the moment as Jason Horne-Francis heads to the States for specialist training, and the Power women qualify for the first finals series but didn't find out until they landed. And they paved paradise to put up a parking lot. See who avoided the traffic jam to take the win on the Gold Coast a little bit later in sport.
Thanks, Bruce. And just before we go to the break, an incredibly proud moment for the Channel 7 family, with one of our finest cameramen ever awarded the highest honour from the Australian Cinematographers Society last night. Rob Brown passed away in March after battling cancer. RB's incredible legacy is ingrained in the award-winning imagery he shot across many conflicts and continents and over many years. Rob's wife Vicky and daughters Ellie and Alex accepted his posthumous award.
His dedication to his craft was unparalleled, and he poured his heart and soul into every frame.
Yes, congratulations, dear friend Rob Brown, ACS. And Abba, you were one of the greatest mates with Rob.
Smith, great bloke, one of the great men, and our families grew up together over 20 years, and to see him rewarded for the risks he took to bring us back the pictures from overseas is thoroughly deserved and well done, and still miss him every day.
Beautifully said. Thanks, Bruce. Well, moving on, cold case clues frozen in time. Next, a rare glimpse inside the Adelaide lab, catching killers years on from the crime. Also, Australia's mobile phone network is set to change forever. Tomorrow, what the 3G shutdown means for you. Curbing bad behaviour on the basketball court, the Adelaide program changing lives. And naked ambition, thousands of Australians bear all in the name of art. 7 News has been given a rare insight into how our scientists catch killers from the lab. Forensics SA is collecting and storing more DNA samples than ever before, leading to more cold case breakthroughs.
Deep in the basement of Forensics SA are fridges filled with frozen DNA. Why are these DNA samples so important in cracking cold cases in South Australia?
As DNA technology improves, there's an opportunity to come back and re-examine samples that may not have been successful the first time around.
3 decades worth ready to crack South Australia's cold cases wide open. And thousands of new crime scene samples are sent here every year, scientists working overtime.
Suspect and no suspect casework.
And it's criminals like these the technology has already caught up with. Cold case murderer Matthew Tilley, North Adelaide rapist Patrick Perkins, and the bicycle bandit Kim Parsons, who since died by voluntary euthanasia, all convicted after a DNA breakthrough years after the crime.
Whenever some new piece of information is obtained, it's quite exciting, and particularly when that leads to the police having new investigative leads.
And it's providing new hope for grieving families. Deb Fulcher's brother Craig Leonard went missing 14 years ago and is presumed murdered.
I'll get upset just thinking about her.
At the time of his baffling disappearance, vital evidence was seized.
That could contain Craig Leonard's DNA.
Now she wants it retested in the hope of finally getting answers and closure.
Not knowing that he's actually has passed for sure and he's just not here anymore. We can't go and like grieve at a cemetery or anything.
SA scientists can now tease cells from the tiniest of samples, and they only need a few to generate an entire profile. Software developed right here, helping with the hits. And there's more to come.
It's always satisfying to be able to bring a large case that has been unsolved for so many years to some sort of completion.
Hannah Ford, 7 News.
Hopes of a greater role for women in the Catholic Church have been dashed. A multi-year reform process is closed without a new teaching document calling for more equity for women. Pope Francis last week said the moment is not ripe to allow the ordination of women.
Ordained men get to determine the pace and the parameters of synodality, and when the time is ripe for taking up this question. I think women around the world reject this premise.
The outcome has disappointed Catholics who've campaigned for the change. Older mobile phones and other devices will cease to work from tomorrow when our 3G network is finally shut down. It could leave tens of thousands of Australians high and dry. Chris Marr explains what to expect.
It's the end of an era. No more 3G. From tomorrow, the network will be turned off, and while most Australians upgraded their devices some time ago, there are still tens of thousands that haven't yet made the switch. As many as 18,000 3G mobile phones are still in use on the Telstra network alone. Add to that a further 70,000 4G devices, which, despite the name, actually use the 3G network for calls. And then there are devices you might not expect. Personal medical alarms, 4 monitors, even pacemakers. These can be hooked up to 3G too. The shutdown announced back in 2019 will make way for the higher speed 5G. So the best advice is to check your tech. You can text 3 to the number 3498 to see if your phone will be affected. Contact your service provider for details on how to upgrade. And we're being urged to check in with elderly family members, friends and neighbours in case they need a hand.
Some good advice there. Well, let's take a look at the weather now, and there are clear skies over much of the city. Gertie's at Pinky Flat tonight, enjoying the final night of the Moon Lantern Trail.
Smitho, it's a beautiful evening to wander around and take in the colourful installations around the riverbank at the moment. And this free event's always such a hit with families wanting to enjoy just a snippet of what the Ausasia Festival has to offer. And while it's pretty spectacular during the day, it's even better at night too. Bring your jacket if you're heading in. We've got some cool southerly winds just keeping the temperature at bay, and they'll hang around for much of this week, but so too will the sunshine. It's really Saturday when spring is set to throw us a curveball. It's going to be very warm, and then potentially a gusty change is due late in the day. But I'll have more on that in the full forecast after sports. Smitho.
Thanks, Gertie. Next, we take you inside the Adelaide Basketball Club, changing the lives of troubled teens. Also, why Prince William's finally sharing never-before-seen pictures of his mother, Diana. Rainfall in the Sahara Desert, the rare flooding event in the usually barren landscape. And Bruce McAvaney reveals a big Melbourne Cup Day honour for legendary SA jockey Johnny Letts. An Adelaide Basketball Club is being credited with changing the lives of troubled teenagers. It's proven so successful, community members are calling for more programs like it to curb the rise in youth crime.
They're only just beginning to see their potential through Eastside Rams. Young South Aussies, some troubled and at risk, are bouncing back.
I've gone through parts where, my mental health was not all there, and Rams was pretty much something that I look forward to. Not just a brotherhood, but more of a family, or like a culture of, happiness and love.
Now there's calls for additional funding, as it's community programs like the Rams that aim to curb disturbing behaviour like this. Last week, a teenager was seriously injured in an alleged stabbing, 3 others facing court, the youngest just 14, and violent home invasions connected to feuding youth gangs.
Having initiatives that are run by young people for young people, those are the sort of initiatives that young people are most likely to engage with.
19-year-old Kawhi Deng is one of 10 Rams players awarded scholarships to play in the US. Now his sights are set on the NBA.
I've been able to go and just see bigger things than my neighbourhood in Adelaide,
Me see him thriving in basketball particularly, it just makes me feel so happy.
But his teenage years were a struggle, growing up in a single-parent home with 4 siblings and a mum working 3 jobs while studying. He says he longed for a male figure to guide him, but peer pressure led him down a dangerous path.
Growing up, I was getting involved, I guess, with some of the wrong things, just hanging around the wrong people.
Through basketball, teens like Kawhi are finding a support system and pathways for positive futures.
We run employment seminars for the kids starting at 14. We also do a tutoring program to help them with their grades, and we also run them through entrepreneurial programs to kind of help the ones that are more business-minded.
Having turned his life around, Kawhi is now on a mission to mentor others.
Having people that actually look up to you about you doing a positive thing and not a negative thing, it's a good feeling in your heart.
Casey Trelaw, 7 News.
Prince William has shared never-before-seen childhood photos ahead of the release of a documentary about his mission to end homelessness. He credits his mother Diana with lighting the fire that would pave the way for his passion project.
Christmas 1993. William and his mother Diana stand shoulder to shoulder with the cooks in the kitchen of a homeless shelter.
My mother took me to the passage. She took Harry and I both there. I must have been about 11, I think, probably at the time, maybe 10.
He says the visit left a lasting impression, helping him see outside the palace walls for the first time.
And I was a bit anxious as to what to expect. I remember at the time kind of thinking, well, if everyone's not got a home, they're all going to be really sad. But it was incredible how happy an environment it was.
It was an experience that would one day lead him to open affordable housing projects and launch his mission to end homelessness for good.
I don't believe we should be living with homelessness in the 21st century. It's when you meet people that I did then who put a different perspective in your head and say like, well, I was living on the street last night. You're like, what? You know, yeah, it's like, I remember that happening.
As for whether the heir to the throne, himself the owner of 3 homes, plus the 54,000-hectare Duchy of Cornwall estate, is qualified to speak on this issue.
Why else would I be here if I'm not using this role properly to influence and help people where I can? He
says he's having the same conversations with his children now as Diana had with himself and Harry.
When you're quite small, you just think life is what you see in front of you.
The 2-part ITV series airs in the UK on Friday. Jacinta Lee, 7 News.
The Sahara Desert has been inundated in a rare downpour. Some regions lashed with more than 200 millimetres in just 48 hours. Drone video has revealed the full extent of the flooding. Sand dunes now replenished ponds in Morocco. And it's just as threatening as it is captivating. Extreme weather across the region in recent months has resulted in deadly flash flooding. South Australian 2-time Melbourne Cup winning jockey John Letts will be honoured on the first Tuesday in November. A race named after the 81-year-old punter's power will now be run on Cup Day right here in Adelaide, celebrating a life devoted to the sport of kings.
Over 52 years, John Letts has done it all with the Melbourne Cup. Now a race named after him on that great day.
But he's going to win. Belldale Bull, Johnny Letts.
The honour is so much. I owe racing everything, and to honour me like this has just been, I didn't expect it.
He told Bruce McAvaney it all started at the 1972 Cup.
The winner, number 16, Piping Lane, ridden by John Letts.
His very first race at Flemington.
Well, it feels really tremendous, Bill.
And again in 1980.
Let's riding for dear life, but Belldale Bull's got the Melbourne Cup won.
Something that you long for in your life. I think if you lined up 100 jockeys out there and said, what race would you like to win? You know what the answer is, don't you? The Melbourne Cup.
Then John's dream job, riding banjo. He interviewed Cup winners 21 years straight.
Melbourne Cup!
He also loves the Melbourne Cup Tour. The John Letts Cup in Adelaide on Melbourne Cup Day, a time for reflection.
I never win as a champion, but you know what the Melbourne Cup does? Puts that stamp. Absolutely. Legend, doesn't it?
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
Well done, Johnny. A great honour indeed. Well, next, the high-stakes operation to bring Adelaide's giant Santa Claus to town. Plus, the moment a high-speed Aussie police chase went off the rails. And bottoms up. Thousands of Aussies strip off in the name of art. Well, you certainly know Christmas is on the way when Adelaide's giant Santa makes his big return. Locals today watching the spectacle unfold as bit by bit Santa was assembled at the Central Market in the city.
Oh, look, it's pretty special when he gets put up. It does signify the start of Christmas in South Australia, and I think it's really important that as a state we hold on to these beautiful little things that make our state so amazing.
Our Channel 7 personality bought the decades-old icon from the City Council in 2021 for just $2, saving the man in red from the scrap heap. 2 police officers have come close to death when their patrol car crashed onto train tracks in Sydney. Security cameras capture the startling moment the vehicle slammed onto the rail line yesterday, just moments before a train hurtled past. The officers managed to scramble to safety. St John Ambulance has begun a lap around Australia to support local communities. It aims to train Australians in CPR while delivering life-saving equipment in dozens of locations.
Kicking off a 9-week road trip, St John Ambulance travelling across the country, training 5,000 people in CPR. It's the first ever drive-a-thon.
And we're driving, believe it or not, 16,000 kilometres around Australia, and we're visiting towns and countries, giving away defibs for the community to make sure they stay safe.
All thanks to generous donations.
St John's a self-funded charity, so for us donations is really important. It also helps us support the work of volunteers across every state and territory in Australia.
The service giving Australians a chance at winning a dream home on the Gold Coast, Melbourne, Sydney, and this multi-million-dollar pad in Adelaide with a very impressive swimming pool. It comes fully furnished. You'll also get $1 million in the bank and a Maserati for your troubles.
Just go along to stjohnlottery.com.au. All the information's there.
St John Ambulance has a staggering 10,000 volunteers donating their time to support communities right across the country. And it's encouraging even more people to get involved. From providing vital support at music festivals to natural disasters.
They're trained to a high standard, which is seen around Australia.
Mitchell Sariovsky, 7 News.
Well, she's got a catchy name, but that's about the only thing catching Izzy Batt-Doyle. The South Aussie Olympian obliterated this year's City Bay record and has turned her sport into a way of life.
A perfect spring Sunday morning, a quiet coffee shop in the leafy eastern suburbs. It all sounds perfect until the assembled group takes off on a 20-kilometre training run.
Back in 2020, we started a little running group during COVID, and it's grown now to 500 members. And every time I race overseas, I've got hundreds of people back home supporting me, cheering me on, and it's just incredible to come back to that community.
Izzy Batt-Doyle and her partner Riley have created something unique and healthy, now with a following of over 500 members. And it comes at a time when her times are personal bests, smashing City Bay records in the process.
Yeah, I was so happy to break the record there and get the win. I think coming off the Olympics, it was just nice to have a couple of weeks of down period, not training as hard and just being a bit more relaxed. And then going into City Bay, it's such an important weekend for Adelaide runners, and I really just put a lot into it and really enjoyed the race.
She's just finished her second Olympics competing in the 5,000 metres, but has her sights set on the marathon where fellow South Aussie Jess Stenson has held sway.
No, Jess and I are great friends, and look, I've looked up to her for a long time. We went head-to-head in City Bay. I beat her there. We raced the Melbourne half. She beat me there. So it's great to have that competitiveness between friends and competitors to really push you on.
But that toughness disappeared when rescue dog Rufus recently joined the family.
Say hello, Bruce. Hello, Bruce. We met Rufus through a friend who was fostering him from the RSPCA, and we fell in love.
Not surprising, Rufus. Great story, Bruce. And Izzy, here's a free plug for you. Great coffee down there at Norwood. I've been in there.
I was going to go for the run, but I decided no.
No, the dog would have beaten you, I
Easily.
think. Running backwards, it would have beaten you. Hey, what have you got, Bruce?
Smitho, the V8 Supercars, the Gold Coast, of course, the Velo coming up. Coming up after the break, we'll take a look at the carnage that was the Gold Coast 500. Now for the season finale in Adelaide at the Velo 500. The Power Women head for their first finals campaign, while Jason Horne-Francis heads overseas. And the best way possible for James McDonald to blow $2,000 on a fine. Welcome back. After a breakout 2024, Jason Horne-Francis is hoping another pre-season trip to the States can lead to even bigger things in the future. The midfielder will head to Wisconsin next month to see an injury prevention specialist after what he admits was a bruising campaign.
Like many of his teammates, Jason Horne-Francis limped to the finish line this season.
Definitely banged up. I think everyone's pretty banged up. I was just fortunate that I didn't have to have any surgery or anything like that. A few of the boys had.
That said, Year 3 was the 21-year-old's most consistent yet, playing in all but 2 games and finishing second in the club's best and fairest count. It came off the back of a pre-season trip to the States, something he's about to replicate.
We had over a few of the boys and I guess we're seeing someone to just have a look at our body and make sure things are all moving all right.
Dual All-Australian Dan Houston has moved on, but Horne-Francis is optimistic about what his 3 new teammates can achieve next season.
Yeah, to lose Dan's a big loss, but we got other assets in that we definitely needed, and it was really exciting to get some new faces into the club.
The star midfielder knows all about being a high draft pick returning home to South Australia, and so he's particularly excited about what former son Jack Lukosius can become in Teal.
Oh, he adds a bit of craft. He's one of the best kicks I've seen in the comp, and just adds that craft. He's another tool in there, so we're going to have a few tools up there, but I think it's hopefully going to function really well.
Josh Money, 7 News.
And Port Adelaide has made history, grabbing a place in this first ever AFLW final series in just its 3rd year in the comp. 7 News was there moments after the side found out.
It's history here in the making. After landing a final spot, the Power are flying high.
Well, kind of just then we've kind of found out. We knew it was very likely and a big possibility after winning against Gold Coast. But yeah, we've kind of just found out now, so we're just so excited, and yeah, like I said, our hard work's paid off and couldn't be more grateful, really.
Secured in the air as the Bulldogs upset the Saints.
The Doggies have held on by a point.
That result and yesterday's 34-point win over the Suns propelling the Power into their maiden finals campaign. Their rapid rise to the top 8 complete in just 3 seasons.
First year, 1 win, 1 draw. Second year, 2 wins, 1 draw. And to have 5 wins in a row and 6 seasons and 6 wins overall is just a huge achievement for us.
The Power could finish as high as 6th and host their first final at Alberton. But first, they'll need to overcome a giant hurdle.
We'll focus on GWS this week and hopefully get another win. That'd be amazing, 6 in a row.
Emily Beaton, 7 News.
WBBL Season 10 got underway with the grand final rematch between the Strikers and the Heat at Adelaide Oval. Brisbane sent the home side in, and a half-century from Aussie star Talia McGrath helped Adelaide reach 5 for 133 from its 20 overs.
Goes straight and hits it beautifully. Runs away for 4 in a beautiful way, an appropriate way to bring up your half-century.
But Brisbane got revenge for last year's grand final loss, cruising to a 4-wicket win with 2 overs to spare. It's a quick turnaround for the Strikers. They play the Sixers in Sydney on Tuesday. Adelaide United boss Carl Veart believes his side is still a month away from reaching peak fitness after being forced to settle for a 1-1 draw in their season-opening clash with the Mariners yesterday.
Yes, we've had some good games leading up to round 1, but friendly games and games for points. The intensity is much higher, and you saw that. A couple of our boys were struggling in the second half.
Adelaide takes on the Wanderers in Sydney on Saturday. Erling Haaland fired Manchester City to the top of the Premier League with a 1-0 win over Southampton. Third place Aston Villa conceded in the 96th minute to draw 1-1 with Bournemouth.
From Tavernier. Evan Nielsen's header! He's got the goal! Aston Villa thought they had 3 points in the bag.
A wild 7-goal thriller between Brentford and Ipswich was also decided deep in stoppage time, Brentford winning 4-3. The Supercars Championship is Will Brown's to lose after finishing second to Brodie Kostecki at the Gold Coast 500. There was an opening lap traffic jam on the aptly named Breaker Street.
That's going to be high risk, and for Woody he's ended up in a turnaround, caught into the back of one of the shell cars, and there's the usual drama on Breaker Street. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars involved.
Kostecki took the checkered flag. Brown finished second ahead of teammate Brock Feeney. He heads to the season-ending Adelaide 500 with a 180-point lead, and only Feeney can catch him. Oscar Piastri went from fastest in final practice to knocked out in the first part of qualifying for the Mexico City GP. He'll start from 17th. Yuki Tsunoda's heavy crash brought out the red flags in Q2. Ferrari's Carlos Sainz stole pole ahead of Mad Max Verstappen. LA Dodgers fans have been stunned despite leading the World Series 2-0 after a 4-2 win over the Yankees. After trying to steal a base in the 7th innings, billion-dollar megastar Shohei Ohtani left Dodger Stadium in shock.
The
you can feel the entire crowd is holding their breath.
Otani said he'd popped his shoulder. Game 3 is at Yankee Stadium on Tuesday. Boom Mare Via Sistina is now outright favourite for the Melbourne Cup after a barnstorming win in yesterday's Cox Plate at Moonee Valley. The win was also jockey James McDonald's 100th Group 1 victory, but he copped a $2,000 fine for standing up in the stirrups in celebration before the race was over. He pleaded guilty to breaking the racing rule. Via Sistina's stablemate Buckaroo is equal second favourite for the race that stops the nation after slashing second in the Caulfield Cup. For tonight, that is our sport. Another huge week ahead. Smith, I don't think I'd worry about the $2,000 fine. A $5 million win. Let's go. Here, have a tip.
I think he wanted the photo crossing the finishing line.
That's worth $2,000 all day.
Sure is. Thanks, Bruce. Well, thousands have shed their insecurities and their clothes for a photo shoot in Brisbane. They were up early to pose naked for renowned American artist Spencer Tunick.
A sight as bold as it is breathtaking. 5,500 people bearing all in Brisbane.
It's definitely quite an interesting physical experience.
At dawn, the Story Bridge transformed into a stage for renowned photographer Spencer Tunick.
Bridges to me are about connections and connectivity.
Known globally for his mass nude art installations, he moved this trusting crowd with calm, directing them into various poses for an artwork titled Rising Tide.
Your eyes are flooded by, 1,000 people in front of you of all different shapes and sizes and skin tonalities. It's quite a bizarre event.
His practiced eye capturing humanity in one of the most vulnerable and liberating ways. But he was fully clothed.
I think if I got naked, it would become, too much attention would be on me as opposed to the art itself. Plus, I don't have any pockets.
Instead, it was Brisbane who showed courage, creativity, and of course, a little cheek. Georgia Holland, 7 News.
Sure did. Well, Gertie's back after the break with the weather forecast.
We've got a warm and mostly sunny week ahead, but then it really starts to heat up on Saturday. I'll have your full forecast live from the final night of the Moon Lantern Trail.
Confronting pictures of the moment a teenager was stabbed during a wild knife fight. Our reporters are live with the latest.
7 News. Unstoppable.
For Adelaide's latest news and more, tune in to Will Goodings and David Pemberthy on 5AA Breakfast tomorrow morning.
Time for the weather now, and Gertie joins us again from the Moon Lantern Trail. Gertie, it's getting busier by the minute.
It is, Smitho. Many are making their way across the footbridge after stopping at the Lucky Dumpling Market for dinner first, and what a perfect way to finish off the weekend. No need for the Monday blues because we've got plenty of sunshine and warmth on the way this week. In the city today, after a low of 13.2 degrees, we hit a top of 26.2. Right now, it's a mild 20 degrees, although a little bit breezy. Across the state today, it was a mostly sunny day across southern parts, and there were some isolated showers about the far northeast of the state too. It reached 27 degrees in Kadina, 21 in Mount Gambier. A trough of low pressures moving across the northeast of the state, while a high is developing south of the Bight, and that'll see some warm, sunny conditions prevail for the rest of the week. 36 is the top for Brisbane, with a thunderstorm possible. Cloudy and 25 for Sydney, 27 for Canberra, 17 for Melbourne and Hobart. Back home, maximum temperatures slightly below average about the coastal fringe, but above average further inland. Warm and sunny in the far north, 35 for Murray, 34 for Coober Pedy, 33 for Roxby. We could see some isolated light showers near southern coast. 20 is the top for Port Lincoln, 24 for Whyalla and becoming windy, 27 for Port Pirie, Port Augusta and Renmark, 23 for Murray Bridge, 19 for Victor, mostly sunny and 21 for Kingscote, and just 18 is the top for Mount Gambier. And there's a strong wind warning for the Spencer Gulf. In the city, down to 11 degrees overnight, 24 is the forecast top with cloud clearing. On metro waters, southerly winds tending southwesterly, then turning south to southeasterly. Sunny and 26 Tuesday, reaching 28 on Wednesday. Mostly sunny and 25 Thursday, Friday. 30 on Saturday and becoming cloudy ahead of a cool change. And 23 is the top on Sunday with just a slight chance of a shower. So a dry and mostly sunny weeks ahead. Smitho, enjoy.
You too. Thanks, Gertie. That's all from the news team. I'll have updates throughout the evening and I'll see you again tomorrow morning. From all the Adelaide team, though, it's good night.
The 7 News app will give you the news you want every minute of every day, including breaking news alerts. Download the 7 News app.